but also want to talk about what's going on with Israel. So Keir Starmer basically, in a phone call to the Iranian president last night, a direct phone call, highly unusual, urged the Iranians not to attack Israel amid really growing concern in Europe and in America that we are looking at some sort of reprisal attack from Iran over those Israeli targeted assassinations of figures, and big concern that, Hezbollah rockets attacks from Hamas in Gaza will actually end up with also a full-scale attack from Iran. What do you make of this, and what do you make of the diplomatic efforts from the West to try and prevent that?
Well, I think, it's a huge concern, absolutely, as you've painted it there. And I think, Starmer speaking to the Ayatollahs is the right thing to do, and the US moving a lot of military hardware to the region because, the way the Iran reacts to these sort of things, they've had some of their key leaders taken out, and Iran, does finance and resource these terror groups that you've mentioned, and, feels as though they should do something. But they're also very well aware that when they tried to retaliate back in April and fired 300 plus missiles and drones at Israel, most of them were taken out by American and British and French jets. And to do that again would be incredibly humiliating. So hopefully what's going on behind the scenes will convince the Ayatollahs not to strike Israel, maybe do other acts. And of course, we also hear at the same time that the Ayatollahs, the Iranians, want to give missiles to the Russians. And the Russians are of course, involved in this because Putin would like to see a bit more activity and a bit more fighting in the Middle East, so that he can try and save himself from what's looking like a desperate situation for Moscow.
And we'll come on to that. But that's the thing. I mean, we're constantly told that, no one wants this conflagration, in the Middle East to, expand. And yet Iran is still funding Hezbollah, encouraging them to fire rockets into northern Israel, and Hamas as well, and the Houthi rebels as well in Yemen. Iran will know that with their actions, they're going to be reprisals from Israel. And we've seen these targeted assassinations. I mean, that was extraordinary. Sort of Mossad. I mean, they don't care. They will go after it. But Israel equally will know that there will be reprisals from Iran. They knew that would happen back in April. They know it will happen now.
Well, absolutely. But it is a judge, and certainly taking out these key leaders. And it is the leadership, most of them living in great luxury in places like Gaza and elsewhere, who are with a long screwdriver telling their sort of foot soldiers, what to do in Gaza. Actually, if you cut the head off the snake, the rest of the snake doesn't do a great deal. So I think it's a right move to make, and it's a balance of what Iran can do. And I expect the Israelis are quite confident after April, when actually the Iranian retaliation was a complete damn squib.
Absolutely, and also the show of support from the West as well. Well, another political leader who's hoping for more of a show of support is, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, and we've seen that week-long now incursion by Ukrainian forces into Russian territory using US-supplied weaponry. We know that Zelensky is asking to use British, particularly some British weaponry I'm trying to know which particular kind of weapon they're wanting to use. They're saying that we want to be able to use that on Russian soil, not just on Ukrainian soil, and that is something that the British are basically sort of refusing to give. What do you make of the West's attitude to what Zelensky has done? Because he's saying, look, this is about taking the fight to Putin, humiliating him. It's a PR coup, but it's also about wanting to take some Russian soldiers captive, to divert Russian resources away from pushing forward in Ukraine and having to defend Russian territory, but also about the bargaining for peace as well. What do you make of it all?
Well, I think quite often attack is the best form of defence, and that's what they've done. We knew nothing about it, and I think even the governments in London and Washington knew very little about it. Nobody thought you could create surprise on this sort of open battlefield with drones, all over the place. So they've done that. They've caught the Russians by surprise. And the myth of the Russian army has completely evaporated in Kursk. I mean, they haven't fought. They've surrendered. And Kursk is is in the DNA of Russian people. It was in 1943, which was the turning point in the Second World War, where millions of Russians fought millions of Germans and actually prevailed. So to see Russian land being taken by the Ukrainians, who, of course, Putin doesn't believe should be a nation anyway, it is a massive psychological piece. And I think Starmer should absolutely allow the Ukrainians to use Storm Shadow. Because what this is doing, what everybody wants is Putin being brought to the negotiation table so we can stop this war as quickly as possible. And most Russians do now. Most Russians are now getting this information of this disaster.
Yeah, the body bags have started coming home en masse, yeah.
Entirely. And by having this bold move, combined arms manoeuvre, and I hope the Ukrainians keep going. If they stop and go static, things will be difficult, but they can only keep going if we keep supporting them. And it also demonstrates that the command structure in Russia is absolutely dreadful. Yeah. Nobody will do anything without Putin's say-so, which is why we're now 8 days into this incursion.
And of course, Vladimir Putin has proven himself, he's not a top military strategist. As you say, we haven't got the correct information going up or going down the line of command. This is what happens. Well, again, this is all going to lead up. We know it's all going to end eventually with a negotiation, and we need to know that Ukraine has got the strongest negotiation position possible. Hamish to Bretton Gordon, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Claire Pearce, what do you make of all this? I mean, we go back to, Keir Starmer calling, the mullahs in Iran. I can't remember how much they're going to be listening. But, we know that certainly what's going on in Ukraine, we know that, the West is playing an absolutely vital role.
Well, it certainly is. And looking at Ukraine, it's important that we keep up that pressure because they have to be able to have their land back. They have to be able to be a country, and we need to support that. What's going on in the Middle East? Is Starmer going to have a sort of strong conversation which they're going to listen to? I doubt it.
I just can't really.
No.
I just can't really see it. I just wonder if they don't care. They don't care about being pariahs and part of the axis of evil.
I don't think they do care. They've got their proxies. They'll do exactly as they please, and they don't particularly care what the West think about it.
No, but I do find it extraordinary that we're constantly told, look, no one wants war in the Middle East. Well, fine. Well, then why don't you stop funding all of the people trying to destroy Israel? Then that might work.
I mean, that's your problem. But getting the West involved in that, I mean, they're not going to listen to it. And what are we going to do if they don't listen? Therein lies your problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much indeed.